Hello friends, so today we can discuss this topic on time complexity analysis. We will discuss what are different type of time complexities present and how we can find it out in different programs, and then we will also do some type of questions to better understand the topic. The first one is O of 1. It is called actually the constant time operation. So what does that mean? This swap function does a function constant type of function. So what it does is, actually, if we inputted two variables in the swap function, it will swap the values of those two variables, and it will be done in constant time. So to understand more, you can take an example of what the time it will take for the sun to rise and set. Like for two consecutive days, like just imagine it will take constant time. It will rise at a constant time and set at a constant time. Let's assume it. So for every day it is constant. That is why these functions are also called constant, because whenever they are called, whenever they run, it will always take a constant amount of time. The time taken to run these calls will not change. Okay, so can a for loop also be a constant function? Can we call it a constant call? Yes. If we run the for loop for a constant variable, yeah, it will be called a constant call, because the for loop doesn't depend on how many numbers are inputted in an array. As you can see in many questions, in almost all questions, we take an input from a function, and as the number of inputted go, like as the number of input increases, the for loop value increases, because the for loop will have to like go through all variables, all the inputted values one by one, and so the time complexity will increase, obviously. But in this, because it depends on C, it will not depend on the how many input we are taking in. Okay, and also like the single line statement, so that sum equal to a plus b, or the time taken to find the sum of a plus b is always same. Okay, now we'll move on to O of n. So what is actually O of n? So you can take an example of, like, there are like 10 students in your class and you are distributing toffees to everyone. So you will go to every student, give the toffee, then go to the next student, give the toffee. So as the number of students increases in your class, you will take more time to distribute toffees to your friends. So that's the same logic applied here. The for loop only depends upon how many times you are for looping on the number of inputted variables or the number of elements in an array, as you can take. So as you can see in this, as the number of n increases, the time complexity or the time taken for this loop will increase. That's why it is called O of n. It means this code will depend upon n. O of 1 means this code will not depend on anything. It will always take constant time, because 1 is constant. Okay. So in this, if we increase n, it will increase, and this is a for loop just from 0 to n. If you reverse the for loop, it will also take O of, like, O of n time complexity, because uh, we are now also running over all the n possible values in an array. If you take an array, then O of n to the power c. Now n to the power c can be a constant. It can be 2, 3, 4. So this time complexity means that we are actually in a nested loop. So what is nested loop is, as you can see in this example, there are two nested loops. If a loop is inside another loop, it is called nested loop. If, like, there is another one more loop inside this loop, then that loop will be nested in this loop. So now when we are printing this hello world, it will depend upon m and n both. So what we can see is, m will run for every value of n. M will run from 0 to m. So now the time complexity of this is m into n, or if n equal to m, then time complexity will be n into n, which is n square. So it will be n square. Now what is log n? So log n will means like, you can take an example of, there are n students in your class, and you will divide the students in two groups, 1 and 2. Then you will divide the first group into another more two groups, like you can call it 1.A, 1.B, and then you will divide the second group into two groups, like you can call it 2.A, 2.B, 2.B. Then you will divide the first, like 1.A group into two groups again. So you are actually dividing each group by a factor, a constant factor of 2. But you can divide it in a factor of any possible constant value, like in a factor of 3 or 4 or anything. So this is the same of log n. The time complexity of a loop are divided or multiplied by a constant value. This is actually used in binary search. So in this loop, as you can see, we are looping from 1 to n, but for each iteration, I is increased by a factor of n. So first I value of I, the value of I is 1, then like I is less than n, like let it be true. Then for the next iteration, I will be multiplied by c. So the next value of I will be I into c. And the next value will be IC into c. So it will be IC squared, then IC cubed. So the value will be increased like this. I can tell you with an example. The first value will be I, then you multiply it by c. So it will become IC. Then we'll multiply it again by c, because the new value of I will be IC now. So now we have to multiply this value by c. So it will become IC squared. So as you can see, the value of I has increased by this factor, this c factor. It will be multiplied at every iteration. So it will be IC cubed, IC4, and so on. So now there are 4 examples we can study. The picture is not so good, but I will tell you what the questions are. So in this first question, there are two constants a and b, and the value of I goes from 0 to n, and the value of a is added by a factor of 5 in the first loop, and in the second loop, the j value goes from 0 to m, and the value is added plus 5. So in this loop completes on its own first, and then this loop completes on its own first, then after that. So as we have seen previously, first this O of n, because the first loop will depend on n, how many time, like what is the value of n. So this for loop will depend on O of n, so it will be O of n plus O of n, O of m, because the next loop will go from 0 to m, and like the answer of this is, you just have to take both inside the bracket, so it will be O of n plus m. I hope you understand this logic. For the second question, as you can see, now this is the nested loop, and for nested loop we have to multiply. So for the first one, it's O of n. So why we have written O of n is, the upper loop is O of n, it's moving from 0 to n, and nested means because for every value of n we have to run the inside loop m times. So same, we have to just take the brackets value inside, so it will be like O of m into n. The third question, so in this question, the ith value goes from n by 2 to n, like it will be half, but the value is incremented by a like just 1. But for the nested loop, it goes from 2 to n, but it is incremented by the value of n, like factor of 2. So for the outer loop, it will be like O of n only, because the value depends upon n, and it is incremented by a factor of 1 only. But for the inside loop, and because they are nested, we have to use multiply sign. And for the inside loop, it is incremented by a factor of 2. So it is like a log n, which we have studied. So we will use log n. Yeah. So same we'll do. So the time complexity of this is O of n log n. N log n. And for the last one, it is from I equal to n to I equal to 0, and at each time we have to divide I by 2. So the first value of I is n, then the next iteration the I value will be like n divided by 2, n by 2, then n divided by 4, and so on. So it is also divided by a factor of n. The answer will be O of log n. I hope you understand all 4 questions. If you have any doubt, please mention it in the comment box. I'll bring more topics like this. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.